Okay. I'm now unmuted, Mike. You may need to do yours.
Yeah, I have done, Steve. So how's it say good morning and happy Friday. Steve, it was a holiday weekend here in the U.S. We have a thing called Labor Day. I don't know if you guys have holiday in the U.K. this week.
You guys are always on holiday. In Tatooine, Mike, we don't have holidays. That's not for sure. So no, I'm thrilled that you did. What is Labor Day? I've never quite worked out what Labor Day is.
Well, those of us across the pond, Steve, we actually work. And so there's lots of labor that's going on during the year. So we actually take some time to get away. You guys have holiday for about 2 to 3 months a year. We get these just every now and again, they give us a day off. This one we call Labor Day for all those who do the real work. So there you go.
Yeah, we celebrate the day the Death Star was destroyed, don't we, really? That's probably our favorite day of the year.
That's awesome. Hey, welcome, guys. I saw Fort Worth, Texas. I saw New Mexico. We got folks from around the globe who will tune in today. I'm here with Steve Cockram, who is also known as Personality Yoda. Steve, how did you get such a prestigious title as Personality Yoda?
I think the cruel one is that I look very old, wrinkled, and green. Hopefully, it's more to do with the fact that I have a particular set of skills that have been honed over years of understanding why people behave the way they do. And Yoda seemed like a good analogy. Now, obviously, for those of you here last week, you'll know that we had Ray join us. Becky's away on holiday because she's a true English person. So I've been thinking about what Star Wars name could Maiko be. So if you want to put that into the chat, what you think is most appropriate for Mike, I will tell you what I think a little bit later. But what is Mike in terms of Star Wars character if I'm Yoda? So you can use a bit of creative imagination, but Mike, you're not quite as attractive as Becky is. So I'm sorry that we're much further down this week on gender and inclusion, but that's just the way we roll here at Giant. So it's good to be with you, bro. Anyway.
Yeah, you too as well, Steve. And I know you had told me before we got here today that I was Jabba the Hutt, but I was hoping somebody in the chat would give me a better character than Jabba the Hutt. So we'll see.
If anyone is not Jabba the Hutt, that would be you. I think I think probably in Giant World, I'm probably the closest we've got to it. But there we go. Let's not go there, Mike.
Let's not go there. So hey guys, again, Steve Cockram. I'm here. My name is Mike Oppedahl. For those who don't know me, I'm the president of Giant. Steve and I have been at this for a long time together. We've had a lot of fun, as you can see. But what we want to do today, guys, is remind you, Steve, tell them what's the purpose of this show. Like if you're tuning in to Personality Yoda on your Fridays, what's the purpose of this show?
So I think that at the foundation of personality is really self-awareness. So we always say that the beginning of emotional intelligence is the ability to be able to know what's it really like to be on the other side of me, and that actually human behavior is incredibly predictable. So what we've done is we've tried to create ways that we can create tools, visuals, voices, best fits, various other ways that actually you can know, oh my goodness, that's why I behave the way I do. That's my tendencies. Those are my patterns. But also, once you've done that, you can begin to ask the questions around, well, how would my personality relate to others' personalities in a work context, in a home context, and effectively create a context where really you'll get far better of me by asking good questions and sending scenarios rather than me just teaching you. So it really is almost anything you want to know about human interaction, communication, relationships. I may not have the answer, but being a pioneer connector, that won't stop me at least pontificating and hypothesizing and hopefully sounding with my English accent relatively intelligent.
I love it, Steve. And you've said, I mean, this show is for the listeners. Not that all of them aren't, but this show is about bring us your questions, bring us your scenarios. If you're struggling in a relationship at work, at home, in a marriage, with a child, like whatever it is, we want to help you process what does it feel like to be on the other side of you, and how do you learn to lead other people in the way they want to be led through their voice and through their true type. So it's good, Steve. We've got a couple scenarios we're going to hit today. The first of which really came to us through the use of our weapon systems. But we don't want to assume that folks know the weapon systems at the deep level that Personality Yoda does, Steve. So why don't you walk us through the weapon systems, and then we're going to talk about a scenario just after that.
Yep, that's great. So I think everything we've tried to do with Giant is to how do we give you things that are visual, interactive, and you can use immediately. So what we found was when we actually created 5 voices, we actually assigned to them almost like a stress behavior. There are certain things that annoy us in our personality. And actually what we found was they were actually relatively predictable. So first thing I do is I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm hoping that basically I can just about do that. Let's see if I can find an application window. There we go. I'm cleverer than I thought. So the premise is we all have a weapon system. So your personality based here around your foundational voice. If you don't know what your foundational voice is, then I don't quite know how you got on here or got on the giant platform, but you really ought to know what your foundational voice is. But here's a few clues for you. So if you are a pioneer by first voice, then you have what we call a shoulder launch grenade. Now, you may look at that and go, well, see, that's not a very pleasant weapon system. And the honest answer is, if you are not disciplined in how you use it, there is no good indoor context for a grenade launcher to go off. So whether that's in your home with your family, whether that's in your workplace with your team, in your organization, pioneers have to be incredibly careful, because when someone triggers their weapon system, usually when they challenge their competence or the brilliance of their idea or waste time and not be efficient and not be as driven as they are, it's amazing how often the pioneer, without realizing it, just turns around and goes, Thum! And honestly, there is no way back from a pioneer's grenade. So some of you will not only know that weapon system as yours, but many of you will go, oh my goodness, my boss is one of those, or my spouse is one of those, and that explains it. So that's the first weapon system of pioneers.
You've never fired your grenade launcher before, have you? And seen some decimation of people. Has that ever happened to you, Steve?
No, Mike, it hasn't at all, as you well know. So I kind of, the tendency doesn't go away. As a pioneer, I know that in a moment of weakness, when I'm tired or someone's annoying me, I can turn around and I have to put a safety on, because I can get into trouble. So if you've been around me any period of time, I'm sure, Mike, I can think of others in the team that I've done it for. When was the last time have I ever grenaded you? Come on, can you remember?
Only one time. It was we were having a conversation at a retreat in a living room, and there was a miscommunication of a couple of people in our ecosystem. And I kind of was like, "Hey, I've told you this before," and you're like, "No, you haven't." And then the grenade came on really strong, and I think we might have even had to share a meal that evening to kind of make amends to that. The ashes of me were left on the couch at the house, but we scooped them up and put them back together, and I was able to come to dinner. But I think that was the only time, Steve.
Well, to be quite honest, Mike, in 7 years, I'm actually quite proud of myself, because that's not really a big grenade. That's just you being a big softie. So I promise you, I've blown up other people in our team. But self-awareness means it's not that the weapon system changes. It means you can apologize very, very quickly. So hopefully, rather than thinking you're just miserable and mean, you actually realize at least it's just in there. So pioneers, apologies on behalf of my species as a first voice pioneer. There's never a nice experience on the other side of our weapon system, I'm afraid. The connectors, second voice, if you're a foundational voice connector, so that's ENFP, ENFJ, if you speak Myers-Briggs language too, the weapon system of the connector of first voice is the cyber warfare. Remember, connectors are incredibly good at nuancing, messaging, communicating, connecting things. But when you wrong them, whether you take credit for an idea of theirs, or they don't feel that you're particularly honoring them and their ideas, or violating values, the connector is genius at just undermining your reputation, taking you out. And in some ways, they're much more sophisticated than the pioneer, because nobody really knows they're doing it. They do it really through a mix of almost what they don't say. So it may be like, somebody might say to me, well, how's Mike? I go, Mike is awesome. He's the most incredible guy, best president we've ever had. So what I'm doing as a connector then is I'm celebrating you. Then they go, well, hey, what do you think of Kevin? I go, yeah, Kevin's a good guy. Yeah, I know he means well. Well, what I've used cyber warfare to effectively, all of a sudden you go like, okay, there's something wrong with Kevin. There's a problem with Kevin. And in the end, I go, hey, it's really brave of you to take Kevin onto your team. I'm really glad someone's giving him another chance, because he really deserved it. And, I'm delighted that HR's cleared him, because I'm sure he's all back normal now. So the ability of the connector to basically take out people's reputation using cyber warfare as a weapon system. You've never seen that, Mike, anywhere in Giant, I'm absolutely certain.
No, of course not, Steve. But no, your example is actually brilliant, because it's sometimes what they don't say, and it's sometimes okay, yeah, that's how you feel. So it's very subtle, Steve. So I think it's brilliant. When the grenade launcher goes off, everyone in the room knows, everyone sees it. It's almost like everyone's kind of embarrassed a little bit. They don't know what to do. The connector's really good at using their weapon system to do things subtly where people have no idea, although they've done an incredible amount through their influence.
So here's the important thing to understand, guys, is we all have a weapon system. They are hardwired into our personalities. You can't change your tendency. What you can do through self-awareness is learn how to choose a different action, or at least apologize quickly when you know you feel that tendency coming on. So there's our first two. Let's move to guardian. So if you are a first voice guardian, that is the STs, by the way, if you, in terms of function pairs in Myers-Briggs. Guardian's weapon system is what we call the interrogation chamber. You remember the Guardians are genius at asking great questions, getting the clarity, making sure things are just, fair, every system runs on time, and people are honored in that process. So what happens, you see, is when a Guardian thinks somebody is being economical with the truth or slightly charismatic and carefree with the details, the Guardian's weapon system, nowhere near as deadly as perhaps the Pioneer and the Connector, but quite painful if you're on the other end of it, is you suddenly feel like you're in an interrogation. And when a Guardian is using their weapon system, you are now guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And effectively, you are locked into the chair, and they're going to ask you questions to try and catch you out. And it feels like, well, you don't trust me anymore. And it feels like this is now a James Bond interrogation. Again, Mike, I'm sure that is nothing that you've ever done to anybody.
No, never, Steve. What's interesting is I think about my Guardian and my weapon system of the interrogation room. And really, when I feel like I need to win an argument or something's really important to me, I actually use, it really is questioning every single fact, detail, memory, truth, everything until, so my wife always says, Steve, that I win every argument we ever have, but I lose. So the reality is I use my weapon system to interrogate until I get every single fact and remember this and what about this and logically put everything together. And it's like, okay, I've stacked up too many things against her and there's no way for her to win.
That's so good. And I think the thing to understand is Guardian is one of the hardest voices to play in a team, because it almost always feels like everyone else is excited about the way forward. And the Guardian, if they do the job well, is asking the difficult questions, to do the due diligence, to actually really check before we press go, have we really thought this through? And when a Guardian doesn't feel they're being listened to, or there is some very, very charismatic entrepreneurial leader who is being carefree with money and not really doing due diligence well, Guardian will not give up. It's basically, now it's a fight to the death, because in the end it violates their very values to let something go forward. So a healthy, mature Guardian is able to ask great questions. A Guardian who doesn't feel they're being listened to actually will usually stand and fight for the foreseeable, for the forcing of truth. And what Mike said there is true, is Guardians, you can often be right and wrong all at the same time. Right in what you say, wrong in the tone and tact with which you deliver it. So again, a lot of people are Guardian first voice, 30% of the population. So you will have met Guardians, and if you're leading anything, they are invaluable to you, but you have to find a way to understand how to honor them. And this is just a clue of what's there. So here's the next one. So creative, there are two forms of creative. We've got a creative pioneer and we've got a creative connector. It's the only one we couldn't harmonize, by the way, in when we turned 16 personality types into 5 in an order. So if you're a creative pioneer or an INTP, your weapon system is what we call the high velocity sniper rifle, because the creative pioneer will sit in the bell tower of a team or a family listening very, very attentively. They don't tend to say a great deal, but if somebody actually triggers their weapon system, again, they dislike people being economic with the truth or arrogance or believing they know best. All of a sudden you'll hear a as an armor-piercing round of logic goes straight through the heart of whoever they think has violated their values or is not treating the thing seriously. So that's a very dangerous weapon, because you remember, creatives, what they say first isn't usually what they mean. So you imagine if you're shooting somebody with a high velocity rifle and it isn't even what you meant. Creative pioneers, you have to be very, very careful, because you undermine your influence quite quickly. Then you have creative connectors, or the feelers. So INFP, INFJ, relational, idealistic, want the world to be a better place. The last people in the world you'd expect to become violent. But what you'll find is, if their weapon system is triggered, if somebody they feel responsible for is being unjustly treated or a foundational value that they believe is vital is being undermined, out of nowhere, the creative feeler suddenly starts to burst buttons, the green monster comes out, and they will jump across the table and they will kill anything that they believe is being unjust and unfair. And it's often quite amusing. It's also quite fun because they don't normally behave that way normally. Any creative stories for us, Mike?
No, I mean, this is not fair because he's the most Jesus-like character we know. But Hunter, one of our teammates, as you know, Steve, he literally is the most wonderful person I've ever met. Anywhere I go in my life, Hunter will always have a job. And yet, a couple of times I've seen his core value system or the people he loves be wrong. And you'll see this like, where is that doesn't even exist in your, like, where did that come from? So Steve, it's brilliant that we came up with the Hulk, because the idea is like that would never happen except for this one time, and then all of a sudden it's like, you don't want to see me angry. So no, I think it's brilliant.
And what happens, you see, is when we describe your weapon system, you automatically know which one is you. So a lot of people were asking last week, how do you know if a test is really your nature? Well, the reason why we give you multiple lenses to look at this idea of personality is eventually you begin to build a picture and go, I really am a pioneer, and that weapon system really is me. And if you're not sure, by the way, you can always ask the people you live with or the people you work with. You often find that they are a fantastic mirror in giving you some honest feedback if you are brave enough to ask for it. So there's the creative. Then lastly, but by no means least, comes everyone's favorite, the nurturer. And by their very nature, these are some of the most caring, compassionate, empathetic, loyal team players. So you kind of go, well, Steve, how can they have a weapon system? And I guess it's a little bit of playing on that, really, because every nurturer carries a bag, a first aid kit, with everything any human being would need for their well-being. So everything from bandages to your perfect coffee that's been curated for you, cards that are already written for you, presents that show they've really thought about you. Every nurturer carries this incredible care package in their first aid kit. So we represent the nurturer's weapon system almost as that kind of first aid dressing kit, but it's so much more sophisticated than that. And the nurturer's weapon system is very, very subtle, because what it really is you violate their values, you take them for granted, you bully other people or do things that offend them. And what they'll do is they will move from being this incredible deliverer of care to becoming transactional with you. They withdraw the care package. That is their weapon system. Everything becomes, well, what am I obligated to do, either as a spouse or as an employee? They will do that, but nothing extra, because what you've done is you've violated their values. And I'm married to a nurturer, as many of you will know. I never quite know what I've done wrong, but I always know when the care package is being removed. And I usually now just say, Helen, I'm really, really sorry for whatever I've done, but I'd really like my care package back. Can I take you out for dinner? Can I apologize in advance? Can you help me understand how I'm able to come back to you? You're married to a nurturer as well, Mike, aren't you? So how does the care package work for you?
I think, Steve, this was one of the most fascinating for us, because, we wrestled with this weapon system. The other ones kind of came in, but this one, we talked about a pistol, we talked about a medikit they throw. But in the end, every nurturer knows that their weapon system is the withdrawal of care, because they naturally care and love and put other people first. They're naturally humble, and they're martyrs, and they're serve other people. But then you wrong their value system. You hurt the ones they love, and all of a sudden that care is gone. And I would say this: I can see nurturers be more cold than pioneers when you've wronged them. So when that medikit goes away, they're walking along the battlefield and they go, "Oh, you're dying over there? Oh, well, maybe you shouldn't have been so mean to Sally last week." And they'll literally walk right by someone who's dying. So I think, Steve, it's brilliant to think that care package goes away and it's felt by everyone.
So there you go. That's our our input for this today, because we're always giving you lenses that allow you to look at the world around you, but we're also giving you mirrors that allow you to look at yourself. So I think we've got our beautiful assistant Kevin in the background, who's going to put up a few questions for us. So we say to affirm a pioneer's competence, but how can you effectively manage up through and help them to liberate them, other than just feeding their ego? Wow. Okay. So what I'm hearing, David, is to go, if your boss is a pioneer, is that right, Mike? Am I reading this correctly?
He's saying, if your boss is a pioneer, how do you affirm their competence without just stroking their ego? Like, what do you actually do to build influence there?
So leading up is always a very, very complex thing to do. So you're right, David, to identify it as something you do with caution. And once you know the personality that you're dealing with, there are various strategies that you can use. So pioneers, if they're leading you, you have to almost come at it in an indirect way, because in the end, what you're got to be careful, if you challenge their competency, they will grenade you. So one of the things that I often say with pioneers is they always want to get better. So every pioneer wants to win, and they're quite prepared to work at developing their skill sets. Most of them are unconsciously incompetent. So one of the things that you can often do is to ask the pioneer, look, pioneer, I know you're my boss. Part of me is slightly fearful of doing this because I've seen what you've done to other people. I think I have some feedback that really might help you go to an even higher level than you are at the moment. But I need you to give me permission to give it to you, because if you don't want to receive it from me, I'm perfectly happy not to. But I need you to be careful how you respond if you really want it. So do you want me to help you get better? Is my way. And every pioneer would then go, well, of course I want you to make me better. And then you say to them, could you put the safety on your grenade launcher, please? Because I've watched what happened the last time somebody offered you some constructive feedback, and I really, really don't want to die today. So you can almost use humor with a pioneer, because they go, oh, I'm really sorry. Yeah, I'll be on my best behavior. And then what happens is you have to give them honest feedback. So, and be prepared for the fact they will challenge you. Now, if you are a pioneer, by the way, by first voice like me, realize this. Challenging a pioneer in any way is a dangerous activity. So I am a pioneer connector, which means I am naturally the most effective person you'll ever meet at turning your challenge to me back on you and making you feel small and guilty. So I have that skill set. What I've vowed over the years for me is to go, what if anybody is brave enough to help me to lead up, then I have to listen and simply engage and clarify and thank them for the feedback in the present. Everything within me, by the way, wants to defend my reputation, justify, tell them why they're wrong. All of that is hardwired into us as pioneers. But I've learned that actually there is always truth in any challenge that someone's been brave enough to bring you. And if you want to receive more of it, pioneers, you have to learn how to not respond in the moment with anything other than in many ways, celebrating them for sharing it, clarifying to make sure you've really understood what they're saying, and asking them to go, I'm going to go away and reflect on this, and then I might come back and ask good questions. If you can be somebody as a pioneer that people feel that you're safe and that they can help you even from below in the organization, that is an absolute win. Most pioneers never get there, and some of you know exactly the type of leader I'm talking about. Mike, anything you want to add on that one?
No, and we'll come to Amy's question here in a minute, Steve, on the creative pioneer. But I think I'd like for you to either validate something or tell me I'm wrong. But another thing I like to do with pioneers to build influence is, before I even have that conversation, I almost want there to be a respect of competence. So I like to bring pioneers really tough problems, Steve. So like, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. What I'm doing is I'm almost playing, it sounds manipulative, but I'm trying to play to their strength. If they're helping me work on a problem and I'm listening and receiving feedback instead of challenging them, they see me as somebody who values their competence, values their strategy, values their winning. So over time, I feel like then I've earned the right to say, hey, now I want to, Steve, I do have some challenge for you. Please put the safety on, but I want to. So is that fair, Steve, to have pioneers help you solve problems to build influence?
That's brilliant. You see, I would say to people, ask yourself, what does your influence bank account look like with the individual? Yep. So if you just started a new job and you don't like your boss, or think that there's some growth opportunities for him or her, you have to realize that you start with 0 in your influence account in most people. Certainly for pioneers, you've got to prove yourself and do something. Yep. So Mike is, what he's doing is saying, here's a strategy for investing in my influence account, because when my influence account is high enough, I can actually cash some of that in by bringing challenge and feedback. In fact, if you do it well, for me, someone who challenges me well, their influence account goes up even higher. But if someone's not receiving your help, it usually means that either you're not doing it in the right way, or actually you haven't really invested enough in the influence account for you to be truly heard. And for a pioneer, Mike, that's absolutely true. It's like, first you got to prove to me you're competent, otherwise I'm not interested. And that actually giving me a chance to be a strategic consultant is a bit like what I do for fun. So now I know how you've been manipulating me all these years, Mike. You're giving away all your secrets.
That's okay, because Pioneer is my second voice, so the manipulation comes through the lens of the Guardian. So we're good. Amy Mass wants to know, Steve, would you give similar advice for someone whose boss is a creative pioneer?
Yeah, I mean, the sniper rifle is not pleasant in the sense of it still kills people. I think the moment you're asking the question, which is to go, do I know the personality of my boss? Mm-hmm. You can then begin asking the question, how do I calibrate support and challenge in a way that means I can lead up with the influence I already have? So the thing for a creative pioneer is they hate arrogance in other people. It's really interesting watching people who lead those cultures. They're always looking for who is prepared to do the unseen work and not seek their own personal credit or ambitions. You often find creative pioneer leaders often struggle to really liberate pioneers beneath them, because pioneers almost always want credit for what they're doing. So the question, Amy, for me is to go, or the answer is, know the person, do your homework on the platform. You can go to the Creative Pioneer series, you can watch the summaries, you can do your study, because what you really need to learn is, how do I build influence with a creative pioneer? Well, with them, it takes time and it takes consistent humility, an honoring of values and an honoring of their space before actually your influence account is high enough that they're then prepared to hear the challenge you bring. So it's hard, because some characters I want to give instant feedback, and then they wonder why they don't have enough influence. So creative pioneers are really hard to challenge, by the way, because they disappear and they can be quite feisty at turning it around. So you have to earn the right with them. Some are really easy to give feedback to. They love feedback. But I would say creative pioneers, you need to do a little bit of homework before you do it, because you have to do it in the right place, in the right way, in the right context. I'd never do it in public, by the way, because it's much more likely to be received if it's done in a kind of a private engagement where they have an opportunity to engage with it.
Yeah. Steve, I think the key takeaway for me on the two answers is that influence account. If you think about whoever your boss is, whatever the voice is, to your point, Steve, number one, do your homework and make sure you truly understand who your boss is and how they tick, and then do the work to earn influence. So I love your analogy of when you first start a job or you've got a new team or a new leader, your influence is zero. So you may not want to bring even any challenge really in the beginning, but over time, as you build influence, you can use that influence to do healthy and effective challenge, which then makes your influence go even higher, to your point.
Totally. So if you think about the whole premise of how do you build an invincible team, it's really, how do you create a context where everyone gets to bring their superpower to the table? So in some ways, if your organization is using Giant, then actually you already have a metric that people are familiar with and a common vocabulary and language. But if you are, if you're on the platform, but your boss isn't, another great thing is to say, hey, I found this great resource. Own what you learned from it, rather than telling them what they're going to learn from it, and maybe send them a link of what's there. But I would always ask people to go, hey, how do I play? How do you want me to play in this team? What contribution would be most helpful for me to bring? Are you happy for me to challenge your ideas in the group? Would you rather do it privately? So sometimes actually asking the question of the leader, most leaders have never thought about it, by the way. The fact that you go to them and go, how would you like me to engage? I might say, hey, I know I'm quite feisty and I'm naturally quite argumentative, and I'll challenge quite hard. I know that's my natural tendency, but if that's not going to be helpful and you'd rather me engage in a different way, give me some clues, because I want to honor the culture that you as a leader of this team are creating. But we want to get to psychological safety where everybody feels they can bring their best to the table. So, some are very collaborative, some are, my idea is brilliant, good luck in trying to challenge it, but it's doing your homework, and don't spend your influence capital before you need to.
Good. Let's answer this one from Steve, from Matt, excuse me, Steve, before we finish up. I'm frustrated with my attitude towards changes in the workplace. I am a pioneer connector, Steve. What advice would you suggest for me to take a step back and better understand the situations around me?
Oh, Matt, I feel your pain, brother. So the first thing to understand is that pioneer connectors, ENTPs, are very, very poor at hiding what they really think or feel. So you may say, I've said nothing. And I've said that a number of times when I disagree. And I come home to Helen and go, didn't I do really well tonight, darling? I didn't say anything and, played a poker place. And she, you are kidding me. Everyone knows exactly what you think because you're like an easy book to read. Every pioneer connector, Matt, can already see how things could be better because they are naturally always pushing the frontier. They're natural consultants. They're always asking, how do people's systems and processes correlate with capital to deliver a better outcome? So every pioneer connector thinks they could do it better than their boss. And the trouble is most pioneer connectors are not very good at not communicating that in the context. So you ask me, what do you do? What can you do well? Well, the first thing, Matt, is own the fact that's what it's like to be on the side of you, own the tendency, and actually take the time to, in some ways, recognize your desire for the pace of change will be radically faster than pretty much every other personality type. So what you think would be normal change would be terrifying change for nurturers and guardians. So learning how to go at this pace which allows all the voices to come, Matt, has been my learning. I used to think 100 miles an hour into the future was perfect. Trust me, it's going to be awesome when we get there. The compromise speed, by the way, is about 30 miles an hour, which for me feels deeply frustrating and painful. But for the nurturers and guardians, still feels like we're in a Formula One car because actually they want to make sure everything's safe before we come. But I would say most pioneer connectors think that they will lead better by putting their foot on the gas and going as fast as they can. The art of great leadership is usually helping others take their foot off the brake when you're a pioneer connector, Matt. So this feels like a therapy session for ENTP pioneer connectors, but there we go, Matt. That's the best I have. I hope that's helpful.
That's good, Steve. So, Steve, thank you. This has been fun. And by the way, people have posted Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're giving me in the chat. I don't know if you saw it.
Good.
I've gotten some pretty good shout outs. No one called me Jabba the Hutt like you. So
I had you down as Luke. I think the force is very strong with you, Luke, and you're that fresh boy faced who can take on the Death Star. So Luke, I'm afraid Mike is going to be when you appear as a deputy for Rey, then I think Luke. I hope everyone agrees, by the way. And that's
we'll get the chat going and see if people agree with the But I'd say this last thing, Steve, is just thank you. So one, we talked about the weapon systems, and thanks for the clarity and the depth on those. And we like to have a lot of fun with those. But guys, they come out every day in the different characters in your life. So just watch out for those. Steve talked about how can you actually use the weapon systems to identify maybe someone's true type. Sometimes people assess different on TV than they truly are. So watch out for those weapon systems. It's a nice tell for who someone truly is. And then we spent a good time talking about leading up. And Steve, my takeaways too are one, the influence account. Be sure to invest in your influence account with everyone, by the way, but definitely with your boss. And the second one, Steve, you said something that was actually gold, which was ask your boss or ask the person you want to influence, how do I do it with you? So I say there's no silver bullets in leadership and influence, but there are secrets. And one is ask the person, hey, Steve, I really want to earn influence with you. What do I have to do? He'll tell me. Hey, Steve, now that I've got influence with you, how do you want me to challenge you? He'll tell me. Oftentimes we assume things, Steve, and it's horrible for our influence. Go and ask the question and then just follow the script that they give you. And I think that's a good piece of gold right there.
That's awesome. And if you're leading a team, actually go and ask the people you lead as well.
Yeah.
How do I lead you well? What does high support and high challenge look like? So asking good questions, somebody far brighter than me, and I think it might have been you or Bronson once said, before we make decisions, if we're going to make decisions, let's use data. If we're going to use opinions, let's use mine. So if you're going to lead a team or lead up, get your data before you actually just decide on your opinion, because most people are different to you. So there we go.
Awesome, Steve. So, guys, it's been good to be with you today. Again, more questions. You guys can keep sending questions in, and they'll come to us, and we can process them at a future show. But this show is all about you. You've got the personality Yoda himself coming in live every single Friday, typically with someone far more attractive But we'll have some fun on this show, and we'll answer all your questions. This show is for you. It's for you to understand yourself. It's for you to lead yourself better, and it's for you to lead and influence those around you to the highest levels. So, Steve, any final words before we sign off?
No, that's great, Luke. Thank you for doing such a great job. You are learning well, young Padawan.
These are not the drones you were looking for. All right, guys. Hey, until next time, Steve, we'll see you next Friday. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all.